The contract sat between us on the kitchen table like a loaded gun. "Come on, Mila, it's just paperwork," my husband said, pushing the pen closer to my hand. "Don't you trust your own husband?" The papers would give him complete ownership of my grandmother's mansion and estate. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but his eyes were already calculating his victory. "My name is Mila, and I'm 29 years old. When I was 21, my grandmother left me something incredible, a sprawling Victorian mansion and estate worth over $1 million. It had been in our family for 3 generations, complete with original hardwood floors, stained glass windows, and gardens that took my breath away every morning. I work as a freelance photographer, which means my income isn't always steady, but I love what I do. I've been married to Ryan for 5 years now. He's a real estate developer who's always been ambitious about building his empire, and when we first met, he seemed impressed by my family's property. Back then, I thought it was sweet how interested he was in the house's history and potential. But over the years, something shifted. Ryan started making comments about how I didn't really deserve the inheritance, how I was just lucky to be born into the right family. He'd say things like, most people have to work for what they have, or it must be nice to have everything handed to you. Those comments made me feel guilty, like maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't earn this beautiful home that meant everything to me. Gradually, Ryan took over more of our financial decisions. He insisted on managing our assets even though the estate was legally mine. He'd talk about tax strategies and protection plans that were way over my head, always making me feel stupid for not understanding business the way he did. Every conversation about money ended with him shaking his head like I was a child who couldn't grasp adult concepts. Subscribe if you've ever felt pressured to give up something precious by someone who claimed to love you. Maybe you know what it's like when someone you love starts making you doubt your own worth. The conversation that changed everything started over breakfast on a Tuesday morning. Ryan spread legal documents across our kitchen table like he was planning a military operation. "I've been talking to my attorney about protecting our assets," he said, not looking up from the papers. "We need to transfer the estate into my name for tax purposes." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Transfer the estate? Ryan, that's my family's house." "It's our house, Mila, we're married, and frankly having it in your name is creating unnecessary tax liabilities." He slid the papers toward me. "This is about protecting our future." I picked up the documents, trying to make sense of the legal language. "I don't understand most of this. Can't we just talk to a financial advisor together?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "You don't understand business like I do. That's exactly why we're in this situation. You've been managing this property like it's some sentimental keepsake instead of a valuable asset." "It is sentimental. My grandmother lived there for 40 years. And now it's worth over $1 million that we could be leveraging properly." He pointed to signature lines highlighted in yellow. "This transfer protects us from liability issues and tax complications you can't even comprehend." The way he said it made me feel small and stupid. Ryan had always been the smart one about money, the one who understood complex financial strategies while I just took pretty pictures for a living. "I need time to think about this," I said. "Time?" Ryan's voice got sharp. "Mila, this is time sensitive. The longer we wait, the more we're exposing ourselves to financial risk." He leaned back in his chair and gave me that look, the one that made me feel like a disappointing child.
"This is about trust, Mila. Don't you trust your own husband?"
Those words hit like a punch to the stomach. Of course I trusted him. We were married. We were supposed to be partners in everything. "You're right," I whispered, picking up the pen. "I'm sorry. I'm just scared of making the wrong decision." "You're making the right decision," he said, watching as I signed my name on each highlighted line. "Trust me." The moment I finished the last signature, something changed in Ryan's face. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating that made my blood run cold. The first betrayal came 3 weeks after I signed those papers. I was driving home from a client photo shoot when I saw the for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn of my family's mansion like a knife through my heart. I sat in my car staring at the sign with Ryan's real estate company logo gleaming in the afternoon sun. My hands were shaking as I called him.
"Ryan, there's a for sale sign in front of our house."
"Yeah, I meant to talk to you about that. I've got some serious buyers interested. We could make a huge profit." "You didn't tell me you were listing it." "Mila, it's my property now, remember? The transfer we did was so I could make these kinds of business decisions without having to run everything by you first." The casual way he said my property felt like a slap. "That's my grandmother's house, Ryan, my family's house." "Was your family's house. Now it's a business asset, and I'm managing it properly." I hung up and sat in my driveway, looking at the home where I'd spent every Christmas morning, where my grandmother had taught me to bake cookies, where I'd planned to raise my own children someday. Now it had a price tag on it. The second betrayal happened 2 weeks later when I was looking for my passport in Ryan's office. I opened his desk drawer and found a manila folder labeled Divorce Confidential. Inside were drafted papers detailing our asset division. According to the documents, Ryan would keep the mansion, the property, and most of our joint savings. I was listed to receive $50,000 and my camera equipment. $50,000 for a $1 million estate that had been in my family for generations. I photographed every page with my phone, my hands trembling as I tried to stay quiet. At the bottom of the last page was a note in Ryan's handwriting: "Wife has no legal claim to inherited property after voluntary transfer. Clean exit strategy." Clean exit strategy. Like our 5-year marriage was just a business deal gone bad. The final betrayal was the one that broke me completely. I came home early from a client meeting and heard Ryan's voice coming from the living room. He was on the phone, and he sounded happier than I'd heard him in months. "Trust me, she had no idea what she was signing," he laughed. "I kept talking about tax benefits and protection strategies until she was so confused she just gave up and signed everything." I pressed myself against the hallway wall, barely breathing. The best part? She actually thanked me for handling the complicated stuff because she said she wasn't smart enough to understand it. Getting everything from my naive little wife was easier than I thought it would be. Naive little wife. The man I'd loved, trusted, and built a life with had been planning to steal my inheritance from the beginning. I crept upstairs to our bedroom and locked the door, finally letting the tears come. But somewhere between the crying and the rage, something else started growing. Determination. Ryan thought he'd married someone too stupid to fight back. He was about to learn how wrong he was. What Ryan didn't know was that years of photographing legal documents had taught me to read the fine print he assumed I'd never understand. My freelance photography work wasn't just weddings and family portraits. Some of my biggest clients were law firms who hired me to document evidence, photograph contracts, and create visual records for court cases. I'd spent countless hours in lawyers' offices, listening to attorneys explain complex legal concepts while I captured images of contracts, wills, and property transfers. All those sessions where I'd been just the photographer had actually been masterclasses in legal documentation. The night after I found Ryan's divorce papers, I pulled out my copies of the estate transfer documents and really looked at them. Not as the confused, trusting wife he'd manipulated, but as someone who'd learned to spot inconsistencies and legal red flags through years of professional work. That's when I noticed something that made my heart race. The property description was wrong. The legal boundaries listed in the transfer didn't match the actual estate boundaries I knew by heart. There were discrepancies in the tax identification numbers. Most importantly, there was language about unencumbered property that didn't account for the historical preservation restrictions my grandmother had placed on the mansion. I started researching property law late at night, cross-referencing everything I'd learned from photographing similar cases. The more I dug, the more problems I found with Ryan's foolproof plan. My grandmother hadn't just left me a house. She'd left me a legally protected family estate with restrictions and safeguards that Ryan's attorney had either missed or ignored. The transfer documents were built on false assumptions about what could actually be transferred. Ryan thought he'd outsmarted his naive wife, but he'd forgotten that his naive wife had been quietly learning from some of the best legal minds in the city for years. The person who confirmed my suspicions was Mr. Harrison, the elderly lawyer who'd handled my grandmother's estate. I called him the next morning, my voice shaking as I explained what had happened. "Mila dear, I need you to bring me those transfer documents immediately," he said, his usually gentle voice sharp with concern. "What you're describing sounds very troubling." When I arrived at his office that afternoon, Mr. Harrison's face grew darker with each page he read. "This transfer is invalid," he said finally. "Your grandmother specifically placed the estate under historical trust protection. The property can't be transferred without approval from the Historical Society and the Trust Board. Your husband's attorney either didn't do proper due diligence or they ignored these restrictions entirely." So Ryan doesn't actually own the house? Not only does he not own it, but attempting to sell protected historical property under false ownership is fraud. Serious fraud. Mr. Harrison pulled out my grandmother's original will and the trust documents. "Your grandmother was very careful about protecting this property. She'd seen too many family estates sold off by people who didn't understand their value. She made sure that couldn't happen to yours." While I was learning about my legal protections, Ryan was getting more aggressive about selling the house. He started bringing potential buyers through for showings, acting like I was just some tenant he was tolerating. "Don't mind my wife," I heard him tell a wealthy couple as they toured the living room. "She's having trouble accepting that we're moving on to better things." He'd already picked out a penthouse downtown and was making plans with his real estate buddies about flipping properties together. I heard him on the phone talking about his big score and how he'd finally gotten his hands on some real capital. The breaking point came when Ryan handed me a stack of moving boxes and told me I had 2 weeks to pack my personal items. "The new owners want to move in next month," he said casually. "I found you a nice little apartment across town, more suitable for someone in your income bracket." But what Ryan didn't know was that Mr. Harrison and I had been building a case that would destroy everything he thought he'd won. What would you do if you discovered the person you trusted most had been lying about everything? Because what happened next changed both our lives forever. The confrontation happened during Ryan's biggest real estate showing yet. He'd invited 3 wealthy couples to tour his property, complete with champagne and appetizers in my grandmother's dining room. I could hear him through the windows giving his practice sales pitch about the mansion's investment potential and development opportunities. That's when Mr. Harrison and I walked through the front door. Ryan's face went white when he saw us, but he tried to play it cool in front of his potential buyers. "Mila, what are you doing here? I told you to stay away during showings." "Actually, Ryan, I'm here because this is my house," I said calmly, pulling out the folder of documents Mr. Harrison had prepared. "And these people need to know the truth about what they're being asked to buy." One of the wealthy couples looked confused. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm the actual owner of this property," I said. "My husband has been trying to sell you something he doesn't legally own." Ryan stepped forward, his voice getting sharp. "Mila, you're embarrassing yourself. We've been through this. The transfer papers clearly state." "The transfer papers are fraudulent," Mr. Harrison interrupted, stepping into the room with quiet authority. "I'm Harrison Blackwood, the attorney who handled this estate. This property is held in a protected historical trust that makes any unauthorized transfer null and void." I pulled out the first document and handed it to the nearest buyer. "The property description in Ryan's transfer is incorrect. The boundaries don't match the actual estate lines and the tax identification numbers are wrong." Ryan's confident demeanor was cracking. "That's just paperwork errors, minor details that can be fixed." "No, Ryan," I said, my voice stronger now. "It's fraud. You tried to transfer protected historical property without proper authorization. You forged property boundaries to make the transfer seem legitimate. And you did it all while lying to me about tax benefits and protection strategies." Mr. Harrison addressed the buyers directly. "I strongly advise you not to pursue this purchase. The seller has no legal right to this property and any transaction would be invalid." The wealthy couples were already heading for the door, muttering about their time being wasted and potential legal liability. Ryan watched his big sale evaporate, then turned to me with pure rage in his eyes. "You have no idea what you've just done." "Yes, I do," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "This house has been in my family for generations. You were never going to take it from me. You signed the papers, you gave me this property." "I signed papers transferring something you can't legally receive. The trust protection means those signatures are worthless." I smiled the way he used to smile when he thought he was smarter than me. "Turns out your naive little wife knows more about property law than you thought." 3 months later, I'm sitting in my grandmother's garden with my morning coffee, watching the sunrise through the stained glass windows I almost lost forever. The legal proceedings moved quickly once Mr. Harrison filed the fraud charges. The transfer was officially voided and all my rights to the estate were restored. Ryan's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Turns out, attempting to sell protected historical property under false ownership didn't just affect our marriage, it affected his entire career. His partners at the development firm quietly asked him to resign after the story hit the local business news. I've turned the mansion's east wing into my photography studio, and business has never been better. Clients love having their portraits taken in rooms with so much history and character. The irony isn't lost on me that Ryan's attempt to steal my inheritance actually helped me discover how to make it more profitable than ever. Last week, I heard through mutual friends that Ryan had moved back in with his parents across town. The divorce papers he'd drafted so carefully were filed, but not the way he'd planned. I kept the house, and he kept his debts. Mr. Harrison framed the original trust documents and hung them in my front hallway. Every morning when I see them, I remember my grandmother's wisdom in protecting what mattered. He thought he could manipulate me into giving up my legacy. Instead, he gave me the strength to fight for what's mine. Never let anyone pressure you into signing away what belongs to you, especially someone who claims to love you. Comment below if you've ever had someone try to manipulate you out of something valuable. Smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up to people who underestimate you. Remember, when someone pressures you to just trust them, that's exactly when you shouldn't. Look at your screen, 2 new videos are waiting. Click quickly because you won't want to miss either of these powerful stories.